Hi, good morning.
Yeah, how's it going?
I'm doing fine, thanks. It's evening here,
Well,
as you know.
I mean that is literally, as they say, the way the world turns. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Why not?
Patreon welcome and welcome to Dr. Alexander Christofferson Luca, who is our guest for today. We got to talking at the National Library of Norway um, right after the talk I did there with Johanna Katrin Friedrichsdottir and Ulla Albert running Norby. When you approached me, and I thought you were someone else, and I can't remember who I thought you were. Do you
You
remember that?
connected me to some other Viking show.
I think I thought
Uh,
you
the,
were an actor. I think like you looked
oh, well,
weirdly
thank you.
familiar to me, like you were, yeah, right. But I was like, is that an actor? I don't know why. I just couldn't quite like something made me think that. Yeah, well, I mean, take it as a compliment, I guess.
I,
Uh,
I already have, obviously.
yeah. And well, we got to talking about how it might be interesting to do a conversation, an interview about, yeah, working on Old Norse language in popular media because we've both done some of it, and you've worked in
Hmm.
particular on the show Beforeigners. So maybe if you would tell us a little bit about Beforeigners, a lot of people outside of Scandinavia may not know much about the show,
Sure.
and what you've done with it.
Yeah, well, I guess, do some groundwork on the setting first, right? So it's an HBO show that was made for the Scandinavian market, and the setting is present day or near future Scandinavia or Oslo in particular. And the point is that people from the past start just arriving in the fjords during nighttime. It seems like most of them are coming and coming into the present day, and then, well, stuff happens, to put it mildly. Present day society has to deal with that, and there's all kinds of difficulties. It's all very much like parallel to mass immigration, right? Except that instead of coming from different parts of the world, people are coming from different times. Um, and the times in particular are the Stone Age, the Viking Age, and some sort of late 1800s, I would say, or maybe early. I don't exactly know. And the Stone Age people are supposed to be Mesolithic, so like really old Stone Age in Norway. Um, and then, so that's the setting. It's very much, Oslo looks very much like the Oslo that I know, that I live in, but there's like um Norse people doing barbecues in the streets, Mesolithic people running around in the forests hunting, that kind of stuff. It's the show is like it's a weird genre mix. It's like partly it's like a crime show. Like it's there's in each season there's like an investigation
Mhm.
like of a murder. And but partly it's a bit of a sci-fi, right? But also it's satire and quite a bit of comedy in there as well. And so critics either loved this or they did not like it at all. So that's
That's how it goes.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, a lot of
Personally, I
people.
think it worked really well.
Yeah, my impression was that a lot of people really, really liked it. I mean, I've been hearing about it for a long time.
Hmm.
I feel like when did it start to air?
So the first season was, I think, 2019, and then the second one was 21 or early 22.
Hmm.
Because of COVID. They were shooting the second one during COVID, so they had to shoot everything in Norway, and everybody there was like a whole, thing
Yeah, sure.
handling that. So yeah.
Huh. Yeah,
Hmm.
I feel like that show and then the Norsemen often come up in the same breath. Which
Right.
shows that people who are kind of into this stuff in a more serious way tend to like.
Yeah. So, but Norseman, that's a Norwegian one. That's the one that's
Mhm.
shot parallel in English and Norwegian, right?
Right, I think so.
Yeah, because it's called Vikingane in Norwegian, like the
Oh, okay.
Vikings. And it's an obvious Viking spoof. Like to me at least, I've seen only two episodes, but
Yeah, and don't they in the English version, don't they use like really jokey caricaturized Norwegian accents or something like that?
yeah, I think they speak like this. Like
Yeah,
now, I'm just gonna take all your goats because I'm stronger than you, so you can just bugger off now. Like,
right. I mean, it's pretty good, right? I mean, that tickles my funny bone pretty well.
yeah, that's like a realistic Viking accent, I guess, right? Or well,
It,
it's not really, but it's more realistic than lots of things you see.
yeah, when I did my 2021 April Fool's video where we said that we had discovered a rune stone inside of a dinosaur skeleton in Colorado. Uh,
Oh gosh.
I I said I read the stone and 150 million year old Swedish, and then of course my translated reading was just "Hurtigrutidur."
You did Swedish Chef?
And
Yeah.
I put at the bottom, please note this is reconstructed prehistoric old Swedish pronunciation. But speaking of prehistoric, so there's Mesolithic people.
Yeah.
So what language do they speak?
So that's really cool. And now I feel like I'm stealing the topic of one of my cooperators on this, like Julian Lisvik is another linguist who worked on the show. He worked mostly on that. So it's when you go that far back in time, we're talking about like 10,000 years ago, roughly, like so 8,000 before Christ. And as you well know, we know nothing about languages that were spoken that far back because there's no records.
Sure.
So you can like for in the European languages, you can reconstruct pretty far back, almost that far back, right? But we're pretty sure that those languages in European languages were not spoken in Scandinavia at the time, right?
Right, right, right.
Um, so what we envisioned is like uh, a situation for Europe that looks more like Papua New Guinea looks today. Like, because you got this Papua New Guinea is a big island, right? It's the third largest island in the world, but still there's like an enormous linguistic diversity there.
Hmm,
There's like 700 languages spoken there,
hmm.
and I would say there's reason to believe that most of the prehistorical world must have been like this, like with lots of linguistic groups, or well, why not, right?
Right.
So what we just envisioned was that we just constructed a language, just Tolkien style, for this group of people. And well, it made it onto the show, but only like 4 or 5 lines. But like, that's like fully constructed, like like Navi for Avatar, or yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
is it inspired by anything in particular? Or just sort of like, let's just sort of throw something at the wall that's really non-Indo-European looking.
Yeah, it's definitely not in European. It doesn't really look like anything, any specific language, and that's like the whole point of it. Because it all started with the our whole process with the foreigners started with us making like we're supposed to make a second language learner's accent for Norwegian for the Mesolithic people, for the Stone Age people.
Interesting. Okay.
So what would they sound like? And the producers didn't want them to sound like Polish people or French people or Germans
Sure,
or
sure, sure.
Arab speakers, right? So they wanted to do something that sounded believable but still like authentic, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we just sat down and like worked on some phonology. We made up some phonologies for some languages, some sound systems, and tried to think about how would that system interact with the Norwegian system, and then like made a second language accent like that. And then one of those got picked by the producers, and then from that basis, Julian started constructing this whole language.
I see.
So,
Building it
and so
around
that,
that phonology.
yeah, so the phonology was sort of set by this accent, right? And then Julian just picked like traits from different languages around the world. So in the phonology, there's a bit of Hebrew. There's like trochaic stress, like so it's like da 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 da, that kind of
Mhm.
stress pattern. And then there's quite a bit of Basque in the grammar,
Hmm.
like toying around with the idea that Basque is a language isolate, right? So it's one of these pre-Indo-European languages that has survived. So just putting some of that in there.
Hmm.
I think there's some grammatical traits from Farsi, from Persian.
Hmm.
So just like people do, like when they construct languages, right? Just build a language that's like plausible according to what we know about grammars, how grammars work for languages, and then making something that doesn't exist from before.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. Uh,
Yep.
and also it's pretty fun, like trying to come up with like an accent that doesn't sound like some accent that you would hear. You're not making fun of some actual group, but rather
Right, because
trying to
you don't want to
imagine,
do that. That's pretty
right,
important.
right, but rather trying to imagine what someone from a completely unexpected and different background would sound like. Like
Hmm.
like like me talking on Nyhetsmorgen. It's like it's like Norwegian has just been discovered newly.
We actually did one accent where we included like an R sound, like the American R, pretty much like yours. And well, it just overshadowed every other trait in that accent. It just sounded like an Englishman or an American speaking Norwegian. Like whatever you did with the intonation or any other sounds.
Yeah, my problem tends to be that my second language R is such a trill that I tend to
Ah,
trill when I speak Norwegian, and that sounds odd to people.
uh-huh.
But oh well. Well, and then so your particular focus though was more on the Vikings language.
Yeah, that was so now I've been talking about the stuff that I don't really know that well, right? Because it wasn't me who ended up doing it. So if you want to talk more about Mesolithic, you could have Julian on. I guess
That'd be
he'd
interesting.
love to come.
That'd be
Yep.
interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about what you did for the Old Norse speakers. So I
Yep.
mean, obviously Old Norse, as my patient supporters and students in my Zoom class and such know, is a language that exists in a big continuum across space and time. Right.
Hmm.
So what are you targeting in the Old Norse that these individuals are speaking? Like, are you giving them some interesting wrinkles in space and time, some interesting dialect stuff going on there? Like, what kind of Old Norse are we looking at?
That's a great question. And like what I would have liked to do is like do a fully reconstructed year 1000 Old Norse, right?
Hmm.
But as you well know, the Old Norse that we have that is like in the dictionaries, I actually have one right here, like these kinds of dictionaries. That's basically old Icelandic from the 1200s, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so what I did for Beforeigners was that I used the normalized Old Norse, which is basically 1200s Old Norse, right? But then I put as many archaic traits in there as I possibly could.
Nice.
So as to make it so my sort of goal was that okay, at least somebody who lived in Bergen in 1250 would think that this sounds a bit old-timey. That was
Okay.
like
Yeah, it makes
yeah.
sense. Makes sense. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a responsible way of doing it. So I'm thinking, I mean, S vas instead of
Yeah.
var.
Yep.
Probably.
So yeah, I considered that. So that there you hit on something that's like a different constraint because I wanted to make this as easy to handle for the actors and for the audience as well. So I figured that it would be much easier if that very highly frequent verb to be, which is what you're quoting there, if that was understandable. So if it
Oh,
was
sure.
"er and var" instead of "es and was," as it
Mhm.
was in Old Norse, then that would be much easier to understand. So I actually went for the newer variant there.
I see. I see. It's an interesting tightrope you're walking there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both make it recognizably old, but also make it somewhat recognizable in continuity with the living language. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the choice I made for Beforeigners. I did like 4 lines or something for a different movie. It's called the Viking Ulven, I guess the Viking Wolf or something. It was pretty big on Netflix a couple of years ago. It's I think it's like a horror movie, and
Hmm.
there's there's a scene from the Viking Age in the beginning there, and then there was like only 4 lines, so I thought, well, I might as well.
Yeah,
So I
right.
just went full of Viking with that one, less medieval. Yeah.
No, it's just whole hog on it. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, because part of what you run into, and I'm sure you've run into this plenty, is Alexander Pope has that great stanza. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep,
Hmm.
it's not the Pierian spring. So you run into the guy on the internet who's read the Wikipedia page about Old Norse and says, well, this isn't Old Norse because it's not exactly what he's seen on the Wikipedia page, but you're actually doing something subtler, right? Like it's not exactly that 1200s old Icelandic. Uh,
Right.
and yeah, you do have to kind of navigate that so that those guys recognize it, like, yeah, this is Old Norse. This is
Hmm.
not maybe exactly what you've seen before. Yeah, that's a
Right.
tough thing to do.
Yeah. And
Did you?
also, sorry, we
Okay.
got a bit of lag here since you're in Colorado and I'm in Oslo.
I appreciate you saying the name of my state in a way that I recognize, by the way.
Colorado.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. I tend to emulate accents when I speak English, so I wouldn't probably if you were English then, well.
Oh, I like actually there's a lot of Americans who don't say it right. So it's like, see you.
All
Great.
right, cool.
Were the actors pretty easy, pretty game to pick it up? I mean, how did you find it working with them? Did you coach them directly?
Uh, just a little bit. So, to answer your first question, yes, they were easy to work with. Uh, like I working on this, I found like a new respect for actors.
Hmm.
Like this is this is like a serious discipline, like for people who don't already appreciate actors, like the abilities of some of these people are astounding.
Hmm.
For instance, so to do this chronologically, I worked a bit directly with the main characters for season one. Krista Kosonen, who plays like Alvildur, the sort of the main Norse character. She's the brunette, if you've seen the show. Um, and the other one is Augusta Eva Erlendsdottir. She's Icelandic, as you might hear from her name.
Hmm.
And she plays one of the other Norse main characters. So we did some readings with them and, tried to get the Old Norse right in one go. But I think maybe, I don't know what was really expected from that reading, but it was a process. So when we just tried to read that, it got a bit hard, as I seem to remember, for the actors to focus on the acting. They had to focus on getting the language right, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so Krista, she is Finnish. She does not speak Norwegian,
Oh.
definitely not Old Norse. I guess she speaks a bit of Swedish, being Finnish, but like not really, according to herself. So she basically had to learn both Norwegian and Old Norse, or to play in 2 languages she didn't know for that show, and she does it so well. Like
Interesting.
her Norwegian is so convincing that I find it hard to not address her in Norwegian when I talk with
Huh.
her.
But that's great for the character too, in a way, because she actually is a second language speaker,
Yep.
right? Whereas I suspect you have some actors who are Norwegians pretending to be second language speakers of Norwegian, which is probably a little bit of a harder pull. Huh,
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, so right, so she has like her sort of her own take on the Old Norse Norwegian accent, right? But I think it works really well because, well, Finnish does have some traits in common with, phonologically
Yeah,
speaking, with Old Norse. So
absolutely.
maybe that's the most historically correct accent that there is on the show.
That's a that is a hot take that I appreciate.
Yeah.
You know, I came back from Finland in 2022, having made some efforts to learn Finnish, and it did change my perspective on some of the phonology of Old Norse because finally I actually heard
Mhm.
things that I'd never heard before.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you know, like actually really hearing the difference between short and long vowels or short and long consonants, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Actually hearing an EY diphthong,
Right.
right? And it's like, oh, okay, this really could, like, things that I had just sort of dismissed as almost orthographic, or not really dismissed, but things I had never really tried to imitate. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and Finnish actually inspired me to try.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely there's some aerial convergence there.
Might be. Might be.
That's really cool.
It's really cool. There's a linguist who has been working on those kinds of hypotheses, Yuri Kuzmenko. He's been he has had a position in Uppsala or Stockholm or something. He's been working on like a Sami influence on North Germanic and stuff. So
Hmm.
might be something there. More than I, but it's a pretty unexplored field, sadly. So
Well,
maybe
there's
interesting
there's
in the
just not
future.
enough people who know Old Norse well and Finnish well,
Right.
right? And that's or Old Norse well and Sami well. I mean, one of the few people that even leaps to mind is Tom Dubois.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's a really underexplored area. Could
Yep.
can I ask you some of the questions that were sent in from Patreon because some of these
Sure.
are I
Sure.
think are dovetail nicely with what we're discussing here.
Yeah, let's go
So
for it.
so Ramvik had asked, I'd be interested in hearing your approach to filling in all the little everyday phrases that
Yeah.
often aren't preserved in Old Norse.
Yeah. So she sort of references you in that question, doesn't she?
Yeah.
So you've been talking about on your channel the fact that we have Old Norse obviously is attested is a pretty well-known language to us, but we don't know how people said, okay, come on, let's go, stuff like that, or maybe let's go, but uh everyday phrases. What were their hesitation sounds like? Like how did they say
Yeah. Well,
right?
or even just how's it going?
How's it going?
You
Yeah.
know, like that's
Verso motto. I think that's I think that's yeah. I think that's attested. But yeah, like stuff like that. So I had to make some stuff up, obviously, right? So how do you go about doing that? There's there's at least two things to think about. So what I used the present day languages, not just like Scandinavian, but like how languages I know work, right? And then I tried to just translate that into Old Norse. So I just constructed some plausible stuff based on the Old Norse corpora we do have, right? So that's one thing. But the other thing is the Norse speakers on the show, they're supposed to they live in Norway, the present day Norway, right?
mm,
And they all to some extent speak Norwegian.
mm,
So they are multilinguals. And right? So it would be plausible for there to be a certain multilingualism effect on their Old Norse. Like, for instance,
sure.
it would probably affect their slang,
Hmm.
it would affect their creative use of language.
Hmm.
So, like, if there's a slight Norwegian accent on the Old Norse of Beforeigners, and there certainly is because I've made it and I'm Norwegian, right?
Sure, sure.
Then that's sort of believable. So, for instance, like, I just made up a word for them saying, like, okay, and they simply say greit,
Makes
which
yeah,
is
perfect. Yeah.
just like present day Norwegian, like we say greit, that means okay. Um, but that's like that's an adjective that exists in Old Norse. You have greiðr, right? And that means like what does it mean? Like simple,
Fine, agreeable.
unproblematic.
Yeah.
What?
I was just gonna say agreeable, fine. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I just had them say that in the neuter to make that an adverb, right? And
Yeah.
then it becomes like, fine, cool, okay.
Also, it sounds, sort of by coincidence, it sounds like great in English,
Yeah,
which,
which is used in almost the same way in present day American English, right? Like, that's great. That doesn't mean that's fantastic. That means that is okay,
right, right, right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got your email. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not praise for your email. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's sort of how I worked, right? I used the Old Norse sources as far as it was possible for me. I got very creative on how to use the Old Norse dictionary because
Mm.
it's only one way. It's Norse Norwegian, not the other way around. But I found a way of doing it the other way around. So I was able to do that, and then yeah. So I've mostly been using the dictionaries for looking up the sources because you got this really really good dictionaries. Like you got the Fritzner
Mhm.
dictionary.
Mhm.
And that's very close to the sources. So
Mhm.
that like it gives an item, and then it tells you in which manuscript you can actually find that, right? So that's good enough for me.
Oh, it's a fantastic dictionary. I just hate Fraktur.
What? Sorry?
I just hate Fraktur.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but,
yeah.
but no,
But
it's
actually,
excellent.
there's an online
Oh, I
version
know,
that
I
where you
know,
don't.
I know.
Yeah.
But every time I think of Fritzner, I think of the huge chunk of a volume at our my grad school department. Just like,
Oh yeah, they had that
yeah,
3 feet of book.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And do you
Yeah, so
do you speak modern Icelandic?
no, well not really. I understand quite a bit of it, especially written.
Hmm,
And whenever I'm there, I sort of speak a bit more than uh when I came. Like when I
sure,
leave, I speak more than when I came, but like
sure. I didn't know if maybe some modern Icelandic idioms or anything like that might influence the way that you'd write Old Norse.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. To some extent, it has, because that's also something I did. Of course, modern Icelandic is very relevant when you're trying to sort of reconstitute spoken Old Norse, right?
Hmm,
So I have been looking at modern Icelandic idioms, and like sometimes I just looked for inspiration. I might like Google Translate something into modern Icelandic and see how they would say it. Like and see if the modern Icelandic translation, for instance, uses only Old Norse words, then that might be something to work with, right? Because
sure.
sometimes there's Icelandic has new words, neologisms, and sometimes there's loan words even in Icelandic. Although don't tell the Icelanders, right?
Yeah, I know. Náttúra.
Yeah, right.
Like some of
The
them
name cutting on
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But
Some of them are pretty old. I was just thinking
yeah, right.
Náttúra and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, I think this is sort of a question for you. You may have an answer for it anyway. Do you
Hmm.
know, because Trinae was asking about this, is Beforders available in the US? Can it be streamed anywhere here? Can you get it on, do you know if you can get it on iTunes or anything like that?
So on the macro level, I know what's been going on. Discovery bought Time Warner,
Okay.
right? And then they withdrew all local content from their HBO streaming service, which is now called something else than HBO, right?
Okay.
And then Sky Showtime bought it all. So if you find it somewhere now, you start looking at Sky Showtime or whatever that's called in the US. Showtime, I guess. Yeah,
I have
but
no
they
idea.
are the ones who own it presently.
Okay.
I
Okay.
did some Googling, but it's a bit hard. I didn't like set up a VPN for America or anything. So I'm Googling from a European IP address, right? But I saw that you could rent it or buy it or something on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
maybe, yeah, maybe
So
they're
there's
not being exclusive. Yeah.
so there's a way. Okay.
There's a legal way.
There
Yeah.
there there is a way, as they say in Star Wars, right?
Hmm.
Um, all right. Jazz asked, how would a modern Norwegian speaker and an Old Norse speaker communicate with each other? Would the Norwegian simply try to get an Icelandic speaker on the phone? How do you
Huh.
I'm kind of interested in how you address that in the show and maybe how you think that might, if you in a time travel situation, how exactly that might play out.
That's an interesting question, and it's really two different questions. So first of all, it would be much easier, I think, for a present-day Norwegian to speak with an Icelandic speaker than with an Old Norse speaker,
Hmm. That's
for
true.
several reasons. One of them is the phonology, the sound systems of the languages of Norwegian and Icelandic are more similar than Old Norse and Icelandic or Old Norse and Norwegian, right? Because we have had some of the same sound changes. So that's one part. Another part is, of course, vocabulary, because even though Icelandic changes slowly or has changed slowly, it has changed a bit. So, yeah. So, but yeah, I would have, of course, called an Icelander the first thing I did, because that's the closest thing you're gonna get, right? Um, so I guess for a modern Norwegian speaker and an Old Norse speaker to communicate, there would be a lot of pointing and grunting and stuff. But like some things could probably be understandable, especially if you got somebody from university to come.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like probably the biggest challenge phonologically is that vowel quantity.
Yep.
Because I think that there are things that speakers of modern Norwegian, modern Icelandic, modern English would think of as the same word that don't sound like the same word to a Norse
Hmm.
speaker. And I think that that would actually be very difficult for us to do to their satisfaction. That would be
Yes. Yeah.
something that a Finnish speaker could probably do to an Old Norse speaker's satisfaction, but that would be, I think, probably the biggest lift.
Yep.
Um,
Better than me or an Icelander, at least. A
yeah,
Finnish speaker would be able to do that.
because that's a major change
Yep.
in from the medieval to the modern languages. That is the complete rewriting of the quantity rules.
Yeah. The quantity system, right? That's what we're talking about. I don't know how versed your followers are in Old Norse phonology, but like we're talking about the change from there's four kinds of syllable lengths in Old Norse, and there's only two in present-day Norwegian and present-day Icelandic.
Mhm.
Um,
And it can be semantically conditioned rather than just morphophonemically conditioned.
oh, right. Can you come up with an example of that?
So, well, I mean that two different words are going to be like it's not just because as not a native speaker of Norwegian or Icelandic, I'm not going to do that exactly right, right? But you're going to have a shorter vowel in modern Norwegian before two consonants than you are before one,
Yep, that's right.
right?
Hmm.
So drikke versus skip, a little
Yeah.
bit longer there. But
Hmm.
in Old Norse, it doesn't matter what's behind it, right?
No.
Skip, skip would be a different word than ski with a
Yeah,
long
it could be
vowel.
at least. Yeah.
Could be, right, right. So it can be
Mhm.
semantically conditioned, not just
Yeah.
not just conditioned by
That
the
would that
phonological
yeah.
environment.
That's like you have this, we use this when we teach this, right? We have like skin, because that could mean like shine or skin, right?
That's a good one. That's a
Uh
good one. Yeah.
there's like skin and skin. And so
Hmm.
you have all the four, theoretically at least, you have all the four lengths in like the verb to shine and in the noun meaning skin. Yeah.
That's a good one because if you say the sun shines, you actually get that overlong solen skin with both the
Mm-hmm.
vowel and that last consonant being long.
In, yeah.
That actually connected with a question that Rambag had sent
Yep.
in for you. What do you mean people disagree about overlong syllables in Old Norse? You must have talked about this somewhere. I thought that was settled. We're going to learn more about this.
That's a great, it's a very linguistic question. This is like Old Norse 203, right? This is not entry level Old Norse
No,
phonology, but
my audience gets pretty advanced with this stuff. So,
yeah, I love that. So first of all, this is really cool because I'm pretty sure this person must have listened to a different podcast I just did. We
hmm.
just did a podcast episode on this, made a new podcast called Language and Fiction. which this person Ranveig, right,
Hmm.
must have heard, because there we say something like it would have been a dream to meet somebody who spoke Old Norse, because then we could finally settle this, right? Did Old Norse actually have overlong syllables? So, Julian, he is my colleague on Beforeigners. He's a theoretical linguist. He's actually a theoretical phonologist,
Hmm.
and his perspective on this is, uh, do overlong syllables really exist at all in any language? Um, so the question would be then, theoretically they are overlong, right? Because you have a root with a long, how is it? You have a root with a long, no, right. So you have a long vowel like in skin, and then you reconstruct a long N because it's assimilated N plus Proto-Norse R, right? So you reconstruct a long N there. So it's pretty, so that's how we theorize that it's supposed to both supposed to be long, right? And they might well have been. But the question is, was it actually phonetically long, overlong? And even like in inflection, does that work? Right? Yeah, we probably should do some writing here.
Wait, hold on. I just got this thing, so I'm still kind of
Yeah.
learning how to use it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we're saying the root, say shine, is
Uh-huh.
skeen. So this vowel is long,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
but that's the root. And then you make the third person singular.
Yep.
So that's going to be
Yeah,
skeen to long vowel and then long consonant.
that's
So
right.
the question being, does that actually represent what what is phonetically realized in a speaker's mouth as long
Yeah.
vowel plus long consonant? Yeah.
Is that actually phonetically realized? Yep.
Yeah. Or is that sort of symbolic of the underlying thing and it actually comes out as just the long vowel and a short consonant or just a, yeah,
Yes,
what's actually
exactly.
being realized there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what's interesting is that in modern Icelandic, you have what seems like a reflex of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I mean, in modern Icelandic, this is,
Do they have the skit? Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
right? So that
Yes.
TN is is a reflex of an old long N after a long
Yep.
vowel. So I mean, to me, that seems like a reflex of something that really would have been so-called overlong. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I think there are overlong syllables in Estonian
Yeah, and in Finnish, isn't it?
and maybe in Finnish too, but I think like really famously in Estonian because
Okay.
um they have the so-called like extra long vowels, which I think can occur before um
Right.
double
Yeah.
consonants too. So
So I'm not far enough into theoretical phonology I don't know the debate that my friend Julian is actually is referring to with regards to the theoretical stuff going on here. But so what we can say is that there are languages that probably have overlong syllables phonetically. It seems if Estonian has it, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my knowledge about this sort of stops here. So to answer Ranveig, that's like this is a bit technical and complicated, but there's a scientific debate about it, and there's doctoral thesis that's like 10 or 15 years old now that is about the quantity change in Old Norse. It's by Nina Garman. It's called The Quantity Shift in Old Norse or something like that. So if you're really into this, that's where I'd go and start reading.
And a lot of good work was done by Hreiten Benediktsson on these
Oh
questions.
yeah, yeah, sure. That's
Um,
probably the classic stuff. Uh, like he's probably the one who's established the received doctrine, I think.
yeah, and a lot of his work is pretty easy to find.
Hmm.
Um, I just put that name in the chat for anyone who wants to follow up on that. Jay had asked, I'm curious about the quality of the Old Norse snippets in the Netflix show Ragnarok.
Right. So there I have to disappoint. I have not seen that show.
And neither have I. So
Yeah, I tried Googling it, but it doesn't seem like that's made much of a stir because there's nothing about Old Norse language in Ragnarok. There's only things that I found were about mythology. So even yeah, I would have to watch it and I didn't have time for that. So
yeah. Oh, sure.
yeah.
I'm going to pull in a question that's in the live chat right now. Dr. Hatlem asked, if you had 30 minutes with a Nordic speaker from year 1000, what would you ask? Or what unknowns about Norse would you try to unravel?
Oh gosh. Yeah, so we've been talking about one of them, right? The overlong syllable
Yeah.
thing. What I would have asked them, that's hard because that sort of they would have need to they need to be a linguist for me to be able to ask the questions I want to ask, right?
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. From the year 1000. No, so what would have been really, really great about meeting somebody from year 1000 is that we would have actually gotten year 1000 Old Norse attested in like a sizable corpus, right? Because as we said introductorily, the Old Norse we have is mostly attested from the 1200s and onwards. Like the largest corpus is from the 1300s onwards, right?
Sure. And
Right.
it's
So
very Icelandic.
and it's very Icelandic. So it would be really cool to learn about dialectal differences, for instance. Like you got this
Yeah.
phenomena, you got vowel harmony in Old Norwegian, but you don't seem to have it in Old Icelandic. And we don't know exactly how old it is because we don't have written sources, and the ones we do have don't have enough of a grapheme inventory in order to express it, right? You got some Viking Age runic inscriptions, but they don't differentiate between the sounds that are part of that assimilation. So I actually wrote my master's thesis on vowel harmony in Old Norwegian. So I'm guessing
Interesting.
to answer, yep. So to answer that directly, I would have loved to hear some real Old Norwegian vowel harmony from a native speaker. That would have been really cool.
Hmm.
Yep.
Satisfy my curiosity while I pull up a question that's connected to that.
Mhm.
Do you think there was vowel harmony?
Oh yeah, definitely. I do not think the written sources could look the way they do if there was not a vowel harmony in Old Norwegian. Like it's pretty consistent. It's like you got manuscripts that follow the rules in like 95% of the words, right?
Okay.
So it would so what I think it's why I don't think that trade had enough status to be sort of what do you call it, like spread um and learned by writers who didn't have that trait in their language. It's because it would have been quite hard to learn,
Hmm.
I think, and also they would have made more mistakes, I think.
Right. They're not faking it for a status signal. Yeah.
I don't think so. And
Because
also
it would be
I
complicated.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just thinking, you're right. It would be really complicated to try to fake it.
So that's one part. And also, I looked at runic inscriptions. That's what I did for my master's thesis. I looked at all the runic inscriptions from Norway, actually. It was a pretty pretty big job, actually. I often regretted the size of that project. But you actually find it in runic inscriptions too. And there you're sort of freed from the medieval manuscript culture to a
Hmm.
quite large degree. And there's even less orthographic rules, and you still find vowel harmony pretty consistently in most parts of the country. So yes, I think there was vowel harmony.
Okay. Similar question. Something else that Rambag had sent in. Where do you stand on tonemes in Old Norse? Do you think they were present at all? And if so, do you think they were high tone, low tone dialects similar to today? And did you take them
Mhm.
into consideration working on Beforeigners?
So I can start with the last part there. this is a level of detail that is impossible to put into effect with actors. We could not have been able to do like dialectal differences on this kind of a level. But I know this also leads me to where I stand on tonym, right? So the received doctrine on tonym that you learn in university when you're an undergrad is that it evolved when the definite inflection was grammaticalized, right? So I don't know if you need to pull up your writing again, but you have like adjectives like leikin, which means playful. Um, and then you have like definite singular nominative of a word which means game or dance or something, which is like, and in the definite form that becomes likin, right? So what what people have theorized then is that when the definite ending was grammaticalized as like part of the word, then you got the distinctive tonal differences, right?
Mhm.
And so the question, where I stand on tonym in Old Norse, you are, of course, as well equipped to answer this question as I am, Jackson. But I think so. It was grammaticalized quite early. The suffixed article, right? It appears in the earliest manuscript texts. So it's probably been around at least since the Viking Age. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think you're right. Hold on, I'm
I think you
messing
can
this.
write actual text there as well. If you
Yeah, I'm
press, oh,
messing this
I
up
can do
to.
it even.
Yeah, you do it.
You
Okay.
can do like, oh, like that.
Okay.
Isn't that?
Yeah. So that, of course, that written form, the point is that can represent the past participle of leka, play, or it can
Yeah.
represent which can be used adjectively, or it can represent the game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, so the notion being that when that suffix definite article the in is just realizes as, I mean, arguably eclitic, that
Mm-hmm.
there is a tonal difference between that, something like
Yep.
lekin
Mm-hmm.
versus the past participle adjective lekin.
Yep.
That is where this originates, and that maybe
Yep.
this also has something to do with the origin of Danish uh, because it patterns in a similar way.
Yeah. The stow. Yeah. Because that still that occurs in words that have tonium one, I think, in the northern Scandinavian dialects, such as mine.
Hmm.
um, yep. So that would have existed in Old Norse, but then again, we come back to this was long N and short N, as you see here, like in and like I can't even say it, right?
Hmm.
That was probably distinctive in Old Norwegian and Old Icelandic, right? We don't have reason to think that they didn't have long N and unstressed syllables. So you would also need to lose that, I think, in order for this to become distinctive. So that's like how tonem arises. That's what I've been taught at least, and I haven't actually gone beyond that. So that's what I have to say about it.
And do you have actors like use their just existing Norwegian tone pattern?
Right. So that's so when it comes to so that this is tonem, right? So but when we're talking about intonation, like the sentence melody, for instance, where we had to make some creative choices because, well, maybe Thomas Riad would have been able to say something about what the tonality of Old Norse was like, or maybe Jan Hognestad. But I didn't like this would have been hard to do too, to like teach the intonation without like then we would need so to explain a bit, we worked with the Old Norse actors we recorded demos of all the lines, right? Because I wasn't able to be on set because I actually had a job.
Hmm.
Like it would have been a full-time job to be on set, so we had to find some sort of intermediary. So we recorded all the lines with an Icelandic actor for both of the seasons. And the producers, they wanted it not to sound too mainland Scandinavian. So what we actually did for the Beforeigners in Old Norse is that it has quite recognizable, I would say, Icelandic intonation.
Hmm.
And that just sounds exotic to the Norwegian ear. And
Mhm.
remember, this was made by Norwegians, right? So that's basically what we did for Beforeigners, and that's about as far as we were able to go with regards to realism. And what I would have to say is that Old Norse intonational patterns were probably not the same as either Old Icelandic or Icelandic or Norwegian.
Sure,
It was probably different.
sure.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult thing to recover through reconstruction.
Yes, because we don't have any sources, right? We only have the present day languages and dialects, and you just have to work backwards from that. So then we're just as the sources are just as meager as other languages which lack written sources. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
and the orthography doesn't reflect it anyway.
Not at all, right?
Yeah, so I mean, what are you going to do? Like, you can't see it in the orthography today either. I mean, you wouldn't look at written Norwegian today, and if you had never heard Norwegian, realize that it had tonemes.
Right. You don't.
Um, she had also asked, any thoughts on the balance in popular media between linguistic accuracy and resource use? I think you've talked about this some. I know as language lovers, it's really annoying when something is inaccurate, but I also guess it's kind of a limited audience that would even notice. So if people can't tell, does it matter?
Hmm. So I think we both have a lot to say on this topic. So I want to start with, so mostly nobody understands Jabba the Hutt, right?
Sure. Okay.
But but the language has to be good enough that it fools the audience, right? So if he just said like "Schwoompy woompy, my woompy loompy boomp," like that would be ridiculous, and it
Mhm.
would also like totally break the suspension of disbelief. You're supposed
Uh,
to actually believe that this is a different world, this is an actual crime lord alien. Otherwise, the whole thing breaks down, right?
right.
So
Right.
I was like, when we did actually the language and fiction podcast, Julian told me that that's actually quite closely based on Quechua,
Oh,
or however you say that. Yeah. Uh, so the Huttese is actually based on a real language, and what you call it, Amerindian language. I don't know what the correct term is.
they're from the
Uh,
Andes.
yeah, it's Peruvian,
Oh,
native Peruvian language from the
oh,
Inca civilization and groups. So that's what they did there, right? And that's why it sounds believable because it's an actual language. And I think that now, at the level that fans are starting to engage with lots of these products, these are products, right? But I think that linguistic accuracy is moving past being sort of a feather in the cap, like it was for Star Trek. I think it was like a feather in the cap for Star Trek that they had like Klingon.
hmm,
But now it's starting to become more and more necessary to be seen as a creator with integrity, I think.
hmm.
Like, for instance, Peter Jackson did like a very faithful job with Tolkien's languages for Lord of the Rings, right? Let's not talk about The Hobbit, but let's stay with Lord of the Rings.
Sure, sure. But yeah,
And
actually, I mean, you look at all of the, all the work they've done on elvish.org, where they break down all of the scenes that they talk in Sindarin in the movies, and you can really actually see the grammatical structure underlying it all.
mhm.
Um,
And they had a lot to work with, right? Like, because Tolkien, he'd really, he'd like the languages are the main part of Tolkien's work, right? Like
yeah.
the stories, they're like sort of secondary almost.
Oh yeah, it's his exotic vehicle for his conlang. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is great. I'm a linguist, so of course I love this, and I guess you do too.
Yeah, I mean, I've never invented a conlang, but like
Right.
I get it, I guess.
Mhm. I
Uh,
have,
have
because I
you?
was yes, I've actually made a conlag for a fantasy author. C.D. Petterson, who's written the Raven Rings. They're in English now, actually, but they're Norwegian. Yeah, but so to get back to the question, so Jackson did that, and that's obvious because it's Tolkien, right? You can't do Tolkien without the languages. But then James Cameron is going to make this fantastic, gigantic movie about blue aliens called Avatar, and like it's like he can't be worse. He
Mm.
has to do something that's realistic as well. So that births Nahui, right? This language that the what you call them? I guess the people are called Na'vi as well. The the blue ones in
Yeah,
Avatar.
whatever the blue
If I
people.
can be so racist.
But
um,
I don't know anything about it. I think I
yeah.
saw it when it was in the theater. I haven't even watched the riff track since it came out. But
Hmm.
um, by the way, do you ever see the 13th Warrior?
Yes, I have. I loved that movie when I was a teenager.
I think it's pretty charming. But
Yep.
did you know that the Neanderthals are speaking that's actually Tom Dubois speaking Finnish on the phone?
First of all, there's Neanderthals, like the enemies. Those are supposed to be Neanderthals.
Yeah,
Oh
but they're
gosh. Well,
but
yeah.
the language is actually Tom Dubois speaking Finnish on a telephone. They just recorded him, they just called him, and they said, and there's a story behind why it's Finnish, but he thought that Finns would think it was pretty funny. So,
Yeah.
why not?
Right. So I can see some problems with like so I don't know if everybody knows this movie, but it's basically sort of it's sort of a vague Beowulf retelling, right? And there's like Norse heroes and they're fighting these boogeymen basically who are
Hmm.
just seem evil. Uh and I would say like in a perspective of Scandinavian history, I would see some problems with having the bad guys speak Finno like a Uralic language.
But it's but he thought making it just like conventional everyday like Helsinki Finnish
Oh yeah, yeah.
was a really funny thing to do. So I thought,
It's comical if you understand it, right? It's
yeah, so I thought, yeah, that's I'm pretty okay with it. It's
but actually I'm interested in what's your take on this? Like, d does it matter? Does Assassin's Creed Valhalla does it need Old Norse? Because you've done that, right?
yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think the one that actually mystified me the most was Frozen.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a fictional kingdom. It's not supposed to be Scandinavia. It's supposed to be kind of inspired by it. But like, why would you care, right?
Hmm.
Like, who cares? Um,
Yeah, because Frozen doesn't claim any realism, right?
no,
That's just romanticism. It's just
no.
well, it's Disney.
So, there's the book in the beginning that's got runes that are in Old Norwegian. It's actually specifically Old Norwegian in Younger Futhark. And then there's the coronation
Because you've
scene.
done that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the coronation scene. But then, so the spoken coronation scene, Old Norse, I did. And I think it's fairly well known in internet circles now that the little choral song during the coronation scene is Google translated into Icelandic. So they didn't care about everything. Um,
Right.
but like why? So I just don't quite understand why they cared about what they cared about. They also had a grad student from our department who was from Denmark come in, and his entire job was to watch scenes and tell them if he thought that the people were behaving like Scandinavians would behave. Right, vis-a-vis how close they stood to strangers and things like that. So like they care about very strange things. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, something like that, I think is part of this phenomena that you and Rambag and Lorian in the comments are alluding to, where audiences now, I think, just have high expectations about linguistic fidelity.
Hmm.
They want to see that you put some effort into it.
Yep.
And I think that Ubisoft correctly anticipates that the kind of people who are going to nerd out about the game and its background and everything are going to really care that you tried on the language.
That's
And
what I think too.
and of course, 1,000 people or so work on a game like that. So not
Hmm.
every single detail is going to be right
Hmm.
because this person really cared and this person really didn't. But the aggregate effect, probably pleases the fans better. Now, do I care? Um, I don't have any reading glasses nearby, which I should really shake at you when I say this, but um, between us, we don't even have a TV. Like we should make that
I
sound like a
see.
brag, right? Like we don't like I don't watch anything,
Right.
so I don't it doesn't impact me. Um,
Yeah, but that's for Jackson personally, right? But what about like your field, your philologist, your linguist?
yeah, but I mean,
Uh,
does that cross like yeah, I think here's the thing where it maybe matters. More people are going to see the lowest rated television show
mhm.
or video game or movie than are going to see, 10 times more people are going to see that than are ever going to see anything that I ever make, right? Like just the fact that it's made by some big mass media company, it is going to reach way more people. And so it's going to get implanted in way more people's heads as
Uh-huh.
this is Viking language or Viking costume or Viking customs. To that extent, the fact that they get something right can make the job of you or me a little bit easier
Yes.
because we don't have to lift quite as much to say, no, that's completely wrong.
Mhm.
Um, like how often in teaching myth classes or just in making videos about Norse myth do I have to say and Thor and Loki, who aren't brothers, because everybody talks about them as brothers because they're brothers in Marvel.
Mhm.
Right. The bigger something is, the more reach it has, the more it shapes how people think about it. So yeah, there is some value in them getting more of those things right,
Mhm.
as far as that goes. Uh, but I also don't lose sleep over it. If something's wrong, I don't I don't shoot awake at 2 in the morning thinking, there's people out there who still think Loki and Thor are brothers. Like I know I can't fix that, you know. So I don't lose sleep about it. Do you?
Nah, I was gonna say, I don't know if this surprises you or not, but I don't shoot awake thinking about these things either. Um, what I do, so what? So you can ask like, what does this matter? It's just language, right? That's like the most apathetic stance you could take.
Suppose.
So so then we could talk about stuff like in older sci-fi, for instance, you have this tendency for let's say in Star Trek, they come to a planet, and that planet is just monocultural. It's monolingual. The whole planet is just it's one unity, right?
And they all
And
speak
that
English, and for some reason it's like 1930s Chicago mobster English. Yeah.
yeah, and there's only white men there, and or at least yeah. So this I'm not criticizing Star Trek for this in particular right now, but that sounds like a pretty fascist world to me, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like human culture doesn't work that way. And like having, if that's like the common depiction and like an institution which is as powerful as Hollywood is, then that can actually be harmful. Or put it the other way around, it can be educative if or educational, I guess the word is, to like have realism. Like, so I want to mention The Expanse here. You know about that show? Probably
Mm,
not, since you don't watch TV, but
that's
there's
fine.
books too. There's books. You can read the books, Jackson, if you want to.
Okay.
But there's it's very good sci-fi. And linguistically it's very good because like it's basically the solar system has been colonized by people from all over the world, and then of course Creole languages start developing. So they start speaking different Creoles,
Oh,
so
that's
they
interesting.
they yeah, so they sound a bit like Creoles in parts of the world where Europeans have colonized. So they like Western Africa or the Caribbean or I don't know, Polynesia. And so they made Creole languages just like that, and it works really well. And it's sort of sets it's a very important part of this world building, and I just love it. But then again, I'm biased. I'm a linguist, so
Yeah, I
Hmm.
appreciate that. I mean, that's also like his historically valid as something that you would expect to develop in
Yep.
situations like that. So, huh,
Mhm.
interesting. Cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I
they do
really
it really
appreciate.
well too. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it when fiction does interesting things with language. Um, I don't know if you ever read A Rose for Ecclesiastes by Roger Zelazny.
No, I have read Selazny, his
I think I read
Amber stuff, but I haven't read that one.
that's a story. It's worth reading. A Rose for Ecclesiastes. The hero is actually a linguist, and he has to and there's, I mean, just to extremely like put a big complicated thing into a small box.
Mm-hmm.
There's a modern Martian language that some linguists have learned, but he has to like he's more of a philologist. He has to get into the old, he has to learn Old Martian,
Okay, old Martian.
right? Like
All right.
the Martian Sanskrit, if you will. I mean that they actually use that analogy, and
Mm-hmm.
and obviously this has bearings on his personal life and the dramatic history of humans on Mars and everything else. But it's a great story from like right at the end of the period when people still thought that maybe there were intelligent beings on Mars.
Mm. Oh, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because like mid 20th century, that becomes a lot less plausible. But anyway, really really good story that way. Um, and I think there's some other bigger sci-fi works that have done interesting things with language. Uh, you read The Expanse?
Yes, that was what I was talking about.
Yeah, I was just asking.
Oh, yeah. Who?
Lauren here. I was just asking her.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
okay. I've seen it. Have you seen it? Okay. We were just talking about it. Sounds kind of interesting. Yeah. Okay. She says it's a little dark.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but there's a glimmer of hope at all times, I would say.
Okay.
I really love the books. The show is really good, but the books are prime.
Okay.
Mm.
I also thought that, Orson Scott Card did some interesting things with language in his Ender series.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhat like probably the most interesting thing I think he did, and now we're really wandering off subject, but I think it's interesting to talk to someone who's also thought about these things, about this sort of thing. He has over time, as the galaxy is settled, English develops its own way among communities that are natively speaking, like places settled by Americans, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
English is going to develop its own way. But there's an international standard that's also derived from English that changes more slowly. It's basically like a ecclesiastical Latin in a sense for the future.
Right.
So that's stark, and it's
Okay.
and it's like it's sort of unmoored from what's spoken as a native language, English, but everyone knows it because it's like the lingua franca.
So it's a bit
Uh,
like Arabic.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a not an implausible future for English, right? That
No.
that in a sense, something like American English actually becomes more different from the international standard of English that's used by people speaking different languages as a lingua franca. Like that. I think it's
Right.
a really interesting idea.
Very, very much so. Yeah, and that would depend on what kind of position America retains in the world that is to come, right? Or because if America has the position it has today, then it's going to shape world English the way it presently does, right? Right? I speak with sort of an American accent right now, and that's
Sure.
that's no coincidence.
Sure.
Um, so let's see. Maybe we'll speak English with Indian accents in 100 years. Who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, presumably someone of your grandparents' generation speaking English would sound more British, right? I mean
If they
that,
spoke English, that is, they
right,
would
right.
definitely sound more British, to be sure.
Yeah, and anything like all that stuff is really interesting to me. What people actually target when they're learning a multipolar foreign language like that.
Yep. Yeah, that's very interesting. So I can do sort of a British accent, but it's not as it's worse than my American.
Yeah, mine is pretty bad too. So
Yeah.
just just leave that
Yeah.
right there. Um, one more question that was from the emails that is probably good as we probably move toward wrapping this up is Ranva could ask, have you done any fun or silly projects to practice your Old Norse you'd like to tell us about, like games, translations, original compositions, maybe?
Sure. Um, I don't think I can tell about any silly things, but I have done fun things. So some years ago, I guess it's almost 10 years ago now, I did music and lyrics for a game called The Frost Rune. It's like it's like the people who made it are very like they're part of this historical recreation community here in Norway. They do like historical sword fighting and they do historical crafts and they go camping in woolen tents and stuff like that in the summer. So people from this kind of community, they made this puzzles game where there was like very good historical research and all the material culture things, and they wanted to do something equally historical with music for the game. So, in addition to another composer who made like the general music for the game, they hired me to do some stuff where there was supposed to be lyrics. So, I'm a musician. That's like my second passion, apart from language. And so I wrote some music and I recorded it. I sang all the voices myself. They're like choral things. Uh, I'm pretty proud of it actually because I wrote lyrics for it and in For en is that's hard to say. For en lag.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Which is one of the oldest and luckily for me one of the simplest meters to write in, but it's not easy to write in
No,
Old
no, no.
Norse. No. So I'm pretty proud of that. Some of that music has been used by the Stavanger Symphony Orchestra, and it's been on national radio, so that's pretty cool.
That's a
And
really fun
recently, I've
project.
done some Old Norse stuff with a band called Calandra. I don't know if you've heard about them. Plug Calandra here.
No.
Uh, Very talented musicians, and they did a song with lyrics in all Old Norse called Baridain. It's on YouTube and Spotify and everywhere. It's got a pretty cool music video. I'm pretty proud of that. It's pretty new. Came out in last fall. So that's some fun stuff I've done with Old Norse, and yeah, doing all this stuff is, of course, it's great practice.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
it keeps the language present for me because in my present work, I work in the teachers' educations in Norway, like as a professor there at a university, and there's not a whole lot of Old Norse in the teachers' education these days.
No, no, sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's why I did, when I was in grad school, I translated Star Wars into Old Norse. It was mostly just like to try to
Yeah.
practice.
That's so fun. So that's Tatooinar de la Saga, right? I
UFO.
actually found that in somewhere in the depths of the internet, like way back, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that that was actually you who did that. Yeah,
It's a very different place in my life, I will say that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's still
Are
out
you
there.
ashamed of it or what?
No, I'm not ashamed of it. It's just like I don't know. It's not something I would ever do now, right? But
Hmm.
it was fun as a thing to do in grad school. And I mean, if you actually, not that most people would just read the little précis, the little summary of turning it into an Icelandic saga story.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually read through the entire saga, I really do kind of make it my own. I mean, it really does. It becomes by the end, especially, it's more my story than George Lucas's story, and like that was kind of fun.
That's
Um,
interesting.
but
I think I might have to revisit that now.
well, you can. I mean, there's definitely been times in between when I've tried to kill the creative impulse in myself, but that was a time when it was very much at the fore. So,
Hmm. I
but
see.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it. I also think that to a certain extent, if you're working with a language all the time, that there is a drive to do something with it,
Yeah.
and obviously creating in it makes you a better reader, right? I mean,
Hmm.
whatever the virtues or not of me translating Star Wars into Old Norse, I read Old Norse better after that, and that was the original goal, and I succeeded.
Yep, it's so doing creative work is it's a great learning exercise. I agree.
Yeah,
But one thing I've been thinking about with this kind of stuff, with like using Old Norse in popular culture, is there's a value to it, like in claiming the language and the culture back from extremists. Have you thought
sure.
about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because some of the demand for translating things into historical languages comes from those weirdos. Um, you see a
Yeah.
certain amount of that floating around on the internet. Usually, it's not
Hmm.
done particularly well. Um, and you run into a certain number of requests that are very obviously by that kind of person
Yeah.
because of what they're requesting.
Yeah, they want to. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not even gonna make up whatever
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
want.
You know the kind of thing. But
Yep.
I think that there's some value in people who are well aware of these languages and what people actually said in those languages. Um, keeping an eye on, actually what, like, this seems like something someone would say in Old Norse, right?
Mhm.
Because I think probably in Beforeigners, like you're having to kind of culturally inhabit their world a little bit too.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
You can't just, I mean, to use less offensive kind of requests that you get, people send you like an entire modern song and say, I want this in Old Norse. Like, well,
Hmm.
no one ever talks about this exact thing in Old Norse. There's all these weird phrases and idioms that you can't really translate. Like,
Sure.
I can make something that's roughly equivalent in sense, but it's not going to be the same thing at all.
No, no.
Um,
It
but
needs to
when
be
you,
reworked. Yeah.
yeah, so actually having to start from that real cultural perspective of an Old Norse speaker too,
Hmm.
I think that requires someone who really hasn't had to inhabit the language, had to read it often, and in a way, to me, that's it probably sounds over grandiose, but I think that's an anti-extremist project. I think that because and this is going to sound like I'm trying to make it after school special, but I think that learning is anti-extremism, you know, but
Yeah.
but it's true. Like, I think the more you understand something, the less it can be part of some, absurd, uh, black and white narrative about the world because,
Yep.
nothing real is like that.
Nope.
Um,
I completely agree. And
and
so, because that's part of my that's part of why I like to spend time doing these kinds of things, right? Because this is my job, and I
hmm,
do lots of these things like on my weekends or in the evenings, right? So for instance, like doing something like the lyrics for Calandra, that's like then we're doing sort of what you're talking about. We're making a song that is about now, but
mhm,
we're making it in Old Norse.
mhm, mhm.
And that's cool for many reasons. Firstly, because Old Norse is really cool, right? But also, I think it's cool for this reason that we're talking about now. So we might disagree slightly about this, but I think there's a value in using the historical language to creating something new, to try and talk about stuff that wasn't talked about in Old Norse, or even to talk about things that are general, right? Right.
Oh,
So
sure,
so
sure,
the
sure.
the Bye
Like, it
Bye
doesn't
In song there, yeah.
it doesn't have to be a super specific cultural reference. I'm not saying that, but I'm
Mhm.
saying if you ask me to translate night train into Old Norse, like, first of all, which
It's
has
Night
happened.
Train.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First of all, what do I do with train? Right? How do I
yeah,
make that meaningful? You know what I mean? Like, it's
of course. No, yeah, so that's not a good request, right? You need to make something new. You can't you
yeah,
can't translate Guns N' Roses into Old Norse, or well,
yeah.
not seriously. It'd be fun
As
though,
a
but
joke. Yeah, as a joke, I guess. But then, I mean, it's a very jokey, yeah, like, this is the kind of thing people want. I mean, you might as well send me the manual to a TI-84 calculator and tell me to translate that into Old Norse. Like, for who? You know?
yeah,
That part of
yeah,
it too, I think, is just it's like, who is the audience that you're intending with this?
yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so like for Beforeigners at least, I could plausibly make loan words. Like so if I would have to say night train in Old Norse, I'd probably either construct a word for train in Old Norse, or I would use a loan word, right?
Yeah,
But
sure.
like but like in like if you're supposed to do it historically, then that's impossible, right? Because those things
Yeah,
don't end. Yeah. Old Norse and trains don't coexist, right? You need a setting like Beforeigners for that to happen.
right. And yet, this is exactly the kind of request that's so common. So,
Yeah.
I
Must be
don't
an
know.
interesting part of the internet that you live in when if you get this commonly, this kinds of,
Commonly.
yeah.
Well,
Huh.
I mean, that's part of just being like a semi-visible person associated with this, right? It's like you
Mhm.
start Googling, like, what is something in Old Norse, and I'm going to come up. semi-high in the Google results for that, and
Mm.
yeah, it's part of the, I don't know, occupational hazards, if it's a hazard.
Yeah, being the Old Norse cowboy. Is it?
If people still say that, I have no idea.
Yeah, so you don't do that anymore? Because that was part of that was a thing earlier, wasn't it?
Well, I still wear the hat,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody still calls me that. I don't know. I do my absolute damnedest not to see what people say about me on the internet.
Oh, Jesus. If I was more of a public person, I would do the same thing.
Yep. Like the first time you do something that goes kind of viral, it's like, oh man, what are people saying about me everywhere? And then, like a few weeks into it, it's like, how many barriers can I put between
Mm.
me and what people are saying about this?
Yeah. Totally get that. I get stressed out even just watching streaming numbers. Like, oh no, it's only streamed 1,000 times during the last like even that feels like a judgment. And then you can have somebody like actually writing something about you. Then that sounds horrible. Hope I never
And
get famous.
and recently my my partner, romantic partner, has been appearing in more of my stuff. We're just having fun with that. But there's also like that kind of like, all right, now I've got to watch this a little bit more closely. It's like,
Yeah.
don't want, I don't like gotta, kind of watch out for, what are weirdos gonna say here. But
Yeah.
but it's been fun. Like for the most part, people are like, if you're taking the
Well,
time to watch videos about Old Norse language, you're probably not, yeah, I mean, you're probably not there just to be angry. So,
no, probably not.
but some people are.
Yeah, well,
Like it
you
does
might get
happen.
some shaman kind of people in there too.
Yeah, or occasionally people who try to break into your house or whatever. I mean, but it's
Yeah.
it's a weird world, man. But it's been fun talking to you about this. I mean, like we've both been there, and at an interesting confluence between academia and academic work and entertainment work, right? And I think that we both brought, seems like, a kind of similar attitude about it.
Mm.
Um, I did you have something from Beforeigners you were going to show us? Was that what was in the slides?
I just, if we needed something for talking points, I just had some stuff, but I don't know if we're wrapping things up now. I don't know. We've sort of talked about lots of these things actually, I think.
Yeah, if it's stuff we
Um,
covered, but I didn't know if there was something else in there that you wanted to show us.
mm, Maybe leave something for a different time because like I got stuff about Mesolithic and I got stuff about Old Sami from Old Norse
Okay,
from
okay.
Beforeigners and stuff. So that's sort of a bit off topic maybe for this talk. I don't know.
Why don't we get both of you to come back and talk about some of the other languages besides Old Norse that show up in the show? That would be really interesting to me.
I'm pretty sure the guys would love that.
Okay, yeah,
So
let's do that as a part two.
great.
Cool.
There's more to be said about Old Norse too. So but we can only
Great.
talk about so many things in one evening, right?
Yeah. Well, sounds good to me. Well, thank you so much, Alex. And
Thank
thank you to
you.
Patreon for coming and for sharing your questions. And well, for now, in beautiful Colorado, I'll wish everybody all the best.